When the alarm rings, you are presented with your first decision of the day. Will you rise, or will you retreat and complain? Before any email is opened, before a single conversation is had, and before the world asks anything of you, there is only you and your will. This is the first arena. And here, the Stoics believed, is where the war of life is often won or lost. The ancient Stoics didn't have smartphones or snooze buttons, but they understood mornings to be sacred, not just because they were quiet, but because they revealed something essential: your relationship with yourself. How you begin your morning sets the tone for everything else. A disordered morning rarely leads to an ordered day. A reactive morning makes a reactive mind, and a mind that is not centered cannot lead a centered life. To the Stoics, discipline was freedom, structure was strength. They were not cold machines, but men who understood that without mastery of self, we are left at the mercy of impulse and distraction. They believed the morning was not a time to consume, but to prepare, to armor the mind, clarify one's purpose, and choose the kind of person one wishes to be. This video is not a guide to mere productivity. This is about presence, power, and peace. To win your morning is not to aggressively dominate it like a tyrant, but to engage it like a philosopher, calmly, courageously, and with a commitment to virtue. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Stoic Waking Mind. The Stoics believed that how you wake reveals how you live. Marcus Aurelius, Rome's emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, 'I am rising to do the work of a human being.'" This wasn't self-punishment. It was purpose. Rising from bed was an act of defiance against laziness, yes, but also a remembrance of your nature, to contribute, to live in accordance with reason, and to embrace the day's challenges with clarity. To the Stoic, the act of rising is not mechanical, it is philosophical. Each morning is a quiet reaffirmation that you are here to live deliberately, not to be lulled back into passivity. Modern distractions have made mornings harder than ever before. Phones now replace purpose with noise, offering dopamine hits instead of direction. Notifications replace stillness with stress, triggering anxiety before our feet even touch the floor. The moment your eyes open, 100 voices compete for your attention. News headlines scream catastrophe. Social media shows everyone's highlight reels. Emails offer obligations, requests, and sometimes subtle guilt. They do not wait. They demand. They interrupt. And if we let them, they decide the course of our day for us. But the core challenge remains unchanged from the time of the Stoics. Each morning, you must decide whether you belong to your values or your vices. Will you drift in the river of distraction, or will you plant your feet in the ground of discipline? The ancient philosophers may not have imagined a world with buzzing smartphones, but they understood perfectly the internal tug-of-war between presence and passivity. A Stoic doesn't rise because the world demands it. They rise because they have chosen a path, one of intention, not convenience. Before the emails, before the obligations, before the urgent lists take shape in the mind, they begin with the soul. They recall who they are, what they believe in, and what they are called to do, not just in terms of tasks, but in character. In those first waking moments, they turn inward, grounding themselves before the day attempts to pull them outward like a current. It's not about waking up earlier than everyone else and wearing it like a badge of superiority. It's about waking up before the world hijacks your inner peace. Before fear, comparison, and noise climb into the cockpit of your mind. The Stoic sees the morning not as an inconvenience, not as something to rush through, but as an invitation. A sacred pocket of time where you choose, deliberately and clearly, what kind of human you will be today. Will you act with reason or be ruled by impulse? Will you lead yourself or follow the chaos? This is the inner discipline, not to give in to the gravity of comfort, not to roll over and disappear into distraction, but to remember the deeper pull of duty, to rise even when it's hard, because you are not here to coast through life. You are here to participate in it fully, to wrestle with it nobly, and to do so in a way that reflects your principles. The alarm clock is not an enemy, it's a call to action, a reminder that life is waiting, and it will not wait forever. The Stoic knows the first battle of the day is sacred, and it must be met with resolve. Place your phone away from your bed. When you wake, sit up and take 3 slow breaths. Then speak aloud. Today I rise to do the work of a human being. Keep a small notebook nearby. In it, write a sentence of gratitude, a reminder of your values, and a task that must be done with excellence. Chapter 2. The Power of Morning Stillness. Seneca, writing in the chaos of Roman political life, knew the value of early silence. Amidst political scheming, public obligations, and the daily pressure of status and ambition, he discovered that his only refuge was the quiet hour before the world awoke. He warned that the mind is like a storm-tossed sea when bombarded by the demands of others. His solution: stillness before stimulus. Silence, not sleep, was his first line of defense. To win the morning, we must protect its first minutes like sacred territory. This is not about curating a perfect routine, nor about performing productivity rituals to signal status. It is about resisting the immediate temptation to react, whether to messages, media, or mental chatter. It is about choosing response over reflex and direction over drift. When we leap into reactivity, we lose the center. The Stoics knew that the beginning of the day is not to be seized by the world. It is to be reclaimed for the self. Stillness does not mean idleness or laziness. It means conscious presence. It is a deliberate, focused retreat inward before venturing outward. The Stoics would begin their days in contemplation, not as an escape, but as preparation. They meditated on virtue, reminded themselves of mortality, and rehearsed the kind of people they wished to be when tested. This was their spiritual armor. They did not seek quiet for comfort, but for clarity. They understood that silence speaks, if we're willing to listen with attention. In this quiet, one can hear the voice of reason, not the voice of fear or ego or comparison, not the voice that screams what the world wants from you, but the voice that reminds you who you are. Reason is the quiet compass that always knows the way. It does not clamor for attention. It waits, steady and soft, for us to still the noise long enough to feel its direction. The goal is not to remove yourself from life, but to meet life with poise. Stillness, then, is a power move. It is a refusal to be swept away. A Stoic begins the morning not with speed, but with strength, the kind of strength that comes from knowing from within that you are anchored. Spend 10 minutes each morning in silence. No phone, no stimulation. Sit with your breath. Notice your thoughts, but do not follow them. Ask yourself, who do I wish to be today? What virtue will guide my actions? Then write one virtue word, like patience or courage, at the top of your planner. Chapter 3. The Stoic Practice of Negative Visualization. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." In the morning, the Stoics practiced a powerful exercise, negative visualization. They imagined what could go wrong, not to worry but to prepare. This was not pessimism, it was mental armor. By imagining obstacles, they trained their minds to face reality with composure. They visualized being insulted, delayed, or losing a loved one, not to dampen joy, but to increase gratitude and readiness. These meditations were not exercises in anxiety, but in resilience. They were not fear-mongering sessions, but sharpening stones for the mind, shaping clarity where confusion might otherwise reign. The Stoics understood that fortune is fickle. They refused to be caught off guard by what life inevitably brings. This kind of visualization helped them confront their attachments, not to destroy love or joy, but to cultivate an appreciation for what exists now. When you remember that you could lose something, you begin to cherish it with a new level of sincerity. And when you rehearse losing it, you diminish the grip it has over your stability. This mental rehearsal made them strong. It removed the sting from the unexpected. If you have already prepared for loss, then gratitude becomes natural. You stop taking the people and comforts in your life for granted. If you have considered delay, then patience becomes possible. No longer are you held hostage by your schedule or your expectations. You're no longer dragged by circumstance, but guided by principle. The modern mind avoids discomfort. It reaches instinctively for ease and insulation, moving toward convenience as a kind of unconscious refuge. It seeks warmth without fire, reward without risk, and comfort without challenge. It wants pleasure without vulnerability, and when it faces even mild resistance, it recoils as if life has betrayed it. In this way, it forgets that growth often comes clothed in difficulty and that strength is forged, not found. But the Stoic mind rehearses difficulty not because it enjoys suffering, but because it knows that suffering will arrive whether we want it to or not. Rather than wait for pain to surprise them, Stoics welcomed the idea of confronting it mentally first, so that the actual encounter, when it arrived, could be met not with fear, but with fortitude. They knew that you cannot build an unshakable soul by shielding yourself from every gust of wind. The soul is fortified in the facing, not in the fleeing. The Stoic doesn't flinch from discomfort. They sit with it. They examine it. They practice embracing what most people reject: cold, delay, insult, uncertainty, not out of masochism, but because every moment of resistance is a chance to grow more resolute. They imagine poverty not to suffer, but to appreciate wealth. They imagine illness not to despair, but to deepen health. They picture loss not to invite it, but to treasure what is. And when life brings hardship, as it always will, it is not shocked, but steady, not reactive, but ready. The Stoic meets adversity with practiced calm, not because it is easy, but because the groundwork has already been laid. Every challenge has been mentally rehearsed. Every setback has already been imagined. This removes the sting of surprise and makes space for thoughtful action instead of emotional collapse. In that readiness, it finds a strange peace, the peace of being prepared. It is not the fragile peace that depends on everything going according to plan, but the enduring peace that can withstand the collapse of plans altogether. This is the quiet resolve of someone who has stared misfortune in the face and no longer fears its features. It is the calm of a warrior who has trained for the storm, who has studied the terrain, who has not merely hoped for safety, but strengthened himself to weather chaos. He does not pray for ease, but prays instead for strength to endure whatever comes. He does not beg for smooth roads, but builds stronger legs to walk through difficulty. This is not just resilience, it is realism sharpened into virtue. It is courage formed not through theory, but through the sweat of preparation. And through realism, we discover inner quiet that cannot be taken away by external chaos. It is a kind of unshakable center, built not in a moment, but through consistent morning practice, grounded in Stoic awareness and deep-rooted purpose. This is the victory of the prepared mind. Each morning, list 3 things that might challenge you today: a rude coworker, traffic, a setback. Then imagine meeting each with calm. Say aloud, "If it comes, I am ready." Follow this with listing 3 things you are grateful for, because they are not guaranteed. Chapter 4. Begin with what is in your control. Control was the cornerstone of Stoic thought. Epictetus taught that some things are up to us and others are not. To win the morning, we must begin by focusing on what belongs to us: our thoughts, actions, and attitude. Most people lose the day before it starts by worrying about the weather, the market, or other people's moods. They step into the morning already defeated by predictions and projections, drained by problems that haven't even arrived. Their first thoughts are entangled in matters that lie entirely beyond their influence. The Stoic path is different. It does not ignore external chaos, but it refuses to give it power. You begin by mastering your side of the equation. What can you do well this morning? Can you rise with gratitude, acknowledging that breath itself is a gift, and that waking up is not something to be taken for granted, but an opportunity not afforded to everyone? Can you eat with mindfulness, treating the act not as a chore, but as a quiet ceremony, a reminder that nourishment is a moment of life's support, not an automatic convenience? Can you begin your work without resentment, remembering that duty is a privilege when viewed through the right lens, and that responsibility, though often heavy, is a form of meaning granted only to the capable? Can you greet the people you live with or encounter with warmth instead of haste, knowing that every human interaction is a chance to embody your philosophy in action? Each moment, from the smallest choice to the largest action, contains within it the seed of self-mastery. The way you pour your coffee, tie your shoes, speak to your children, or check your messages, all of it is part of the training. These are not throwaway motions. These are the brushstrokes that form the canvas of your day. And just like an artist would not rush through their work with carelessness, the Stoic understands that presence in small things leads to power in greater ones. Consistency is not built in grand gestures, but in the humility of daily attentiveness. Even the thoughts you allow in those early moments count. Do you begin by replaying yesterday's disappointments? Do you spiral into worry about tomorrow? Or do you choose to be where your feet are, to center yourself in what is here, what is now, what is possible? The Stoic understands that thoughts shape the quality of the day more than events themselves, and so the discipline starts within, long before the world knocks on the door. We live in a world that constantly urges us to outsource our peace, to conditions, to people, to performance. The messaging is clear. Your serenity depends on whether things go your way. But the Stoic refuses this trap. The Stoic reclaims peace by choosing to focus only on what is theirs. They narrow the circle of concern until it aligns with the circle of control. By doing this, they conserve energy, build strength, and act with intention rather than reaction. And from this focus arises a mental stillness, a quiet invincibility that isn't disturbed by every external change. By placing our energy on the controllable, we stop wasting it on what is indifferent. The weather will change, the market will fluctuate, people will have moods, but we can choose how we respond. We gain clarity, not because the world is quiet, but because we've decided where to place our attention. We gain composure, not because life is easy, but because we are grounded in what truly belongs to us. And most of all, we gain progress, not the noisy kind that shows off, but the steady kind that builds a life. It is the kind of progress that, though often invisible to the world, becomes unmistakably visible to the soul. And that kind of inner transformation, it's how mornings become victories. Write a 2-column list: what I can control and what I cannot. For everything that bothers or excites you this morning, put it in one of the columns. Then circle the actions you can take. Begin your day only with those. Chapter 5. The first act of virtue. The Stoics believed in living according to virtue: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These weren't abstract ideals to be debated in classrooms or confined to philosophical texts. They were living principles meant to be demonstrated in action, especially in the unguarded, often overlooked routines of daily life. The morning, fresh and unspoiled by outside influence, is your first and most powerful opportunity to act in alignment with these ideals. It is the crucible where your intentions meet reality. How you begin reveals what you prioritize. Your first actions whisper your truest commitments, and they do so before you've spoken a single word to the world. What does that mean? It means choosing discipline over indulgence, the firmness to rise when the bed calls you to stay, and the refusal to let comfort define your values. Patience over hurry, the choice to move with deliberation instead of panic, to resist the tyranny of urgency. Kindness over frustration, greeting others not with sharpness, but with soft strength and generous attention. Virtue isn't loud, and it doesn't require a spotlight. It's not about dramatic heroism or public displays of moral superiority. It's about the quiet, consistent decision to hold yourself to a higher standard, even when no one is watching, and especially when no one is watching. It can be as simple as making your bed with care, not out of compulsion, but out of respect for order and self-discipline, or treating your partner with gentleness when irritation could easily take over, understanding that love, like character, is revealed through restraint and presence. Every morning offers a test, and life will grade you quietly but thoroughly. There are no announcements, no awards, no confetti falling from the ceiling. Only you know whether you passed by aligning your behavior with your beliefs. Only you know if your morning reflects your values or your vices. And every small act is a chance to affirm your character, to shape your nature just a bit more in the image of the person you are striving to become. You don't need the perfect routine. You don't need an hour of curated habits, branded journals, or influencer-approved rituals. You need a purposeful first step, one rooted in the virtues you aim to live by. That step, no matter how simple, can shift your entire trajectory for the day. Like a ship that corrects its course by a single degree, that early adjustment determines where you land by nightfall. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." This is the Stoic call to action. It is blunt, it is unapologetic, and it is liberating. The morning is not for theory, it is for embodiment, for doing, for becoming. It is the first moment of truth, and when met with virtue, it sets a tone of inner alignment that echoes through everything that follows. Let your first act be one that declares, "I choose to live with intention. I choose to meet the day as a philosopher in motion." Pick one virtue for the day. Let it be your compass, not just a word, but a principle you intend to breathe life into with your actions. Then choose a small action that embodies it, something specific, simple, and immediately doable. If you choose temperance, perhaps it's skipping sugar at breakfast or choosing to listen instead of reacting impulsively in conversation. If justice, maybe it's sending a kind message to someone you've ignored, standing up quietly for someone who has been overlooked, or paying a debt of gratitude you've delayed. If you choose courage, speak honestly when it would be easier to remain silent, or confront a task you've long avoided. If wisdom, spend 10 minutes in quiet reading or reflection before diving into distractions. These actions are not grand gestures. They are seeds, small acts that plant something lasting within you. Do it first. Do it with intention. Do it before the day's noise tries to rewrite your direction. Let your morning reflect your values, not as aspiration, but as initiation. When your first action arises from virtue, you anchor your identity, and everything else flows more steadily from that center. Chapter 6. Setting your inner tempo. The modern world races. The average morning now resembles a fire drill, rushed, noisy, full of scattered intention. Alarms buzz, notifications pull our focus, and our minds sprint before our feet even touch the floor. But the Stoics taught something revolutionary in contrast. It is not speed that defines the wise, but rhythm. Rhythm implies control. It implies measure. The wise do not scramble, they pace. They don't merely react, they respond. And response, true response, requires rhythm, an inner tempo, set not by the chaos of the external world, but by the steadiness of the internal compass. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the chaos around him, wars, politics, betrayals, and yet his writings are calm, introspective, composed. Why? Because he trained himself to walk in step with what mattered. He anchored himself in what was within his control and refused to let the noise of the world dictate the tempo of his thoughts. He did not let the actions of others or the demands of the moment pull him out of his own alignment. The world moved fast. He moved deliberately. His composure was not born of stillness in his environment, but of stillness in his character. Your morning rhythm is your anchor. It is your first act of sovereignty, your first declaration that this day, however chaotic or uncertain, will begin on your terms. Begin too fast, and you begin in surrender, to urgency, to fear, to disarray. Your energy becomes scattered before it has found its center, but begin with clarity, and the world may still spin, but you will not be spun. To win the morning, you must be the one who sets the pace. Not your phone, not the headlines, not the expectations of others. You must decide how your first moments unfold. This doesn't mean doing everything slowly. It means doing everything with presence. Presence is not just being awake, it is being awake with intention. It means breathing instead of rushing, observing instead of reacting, and starting each task with a pause that says, I am in command of this moment. That small space between stimulus and response is where peace is born. That's where identity is shaped. The Stoic cultivates that space through practice, through repetition, through the daily decision to live deliberately. They treat each morning as a training ground for their mind, a rehearsal for how they will show up not just today, but in life. To move with virtue, the Stoics knew, was to move in harmony with nature, and nature does not rush. The sun rises steadily, casting its light with quiet certainty, not frantically. Seasons change with order, never late, never frantic. The trees do not race to bloom. Rivers do not panic their way downstream. The ocean does not crash its waves in haste. There is order and rhythm in all that grows and flows. You are not a machine to be cranked into productivity. You are a rational being with the power to move with reason, to choose how you begin, how you act, how you pace yourself. A morning lived in rhythm is a morning lived in alignment. And that alignment becomes a refuge throughout the day, when the world inevitably begins to speed up again. When the noise rises, when people rush, when demands hit you like waves, your inner rhythm becomes your compass. When the pace of the world surges forward, the person anchored in rhythm walks forward, not as one overwhelmed, but as one composed, precise, and purposeful. You become a force, not a follower. You live the day instead of being lived by it. Set a ritual that begins your morning rhythm. This might be lighting a candle, drinking water slowly, or reciting a short line from a Stoic text. Do it at the same time each day. Let it be your internal metronome. Then allow each following action to unfold from that beat. Don't race, lead. Chapter 7. The Mind Before the Mirror. Each morning we face a mirror, but the Stoics would ask, do you face it with the body or the mind? It's easy to groom the external, to polish the appearance, adjust the hair, examine the posture. These are visible acts of preparation. But the inner life is the true reflection. It is the one that follows us when no one else is looking. And it is this, the Stoics believed, that requires our deepest attention before we step into the world. The face we show the world begins with the face we reveal to ourselves. Epictetus taught that our opinions, not our surroundings, disturb us. What you think of yourself, what you expect from others, what you fear might happen, these are the forces that shape your peace. These internal interpretations are the architects of your emotional world. So the true mirror is not the glass on your wall, but the thoughts you allow and the judgments you hold. You may perfect your image, but if your mind is clouded with resentment, fear, or vanity, your peace will remain elusive. To begin your morning in self-reflection is not vanity, it is self-respect. It is a form of philosophical hygiene, a mental and emotional cleansing before the day collects its weight and complexity. Just as you would not leave your home without washing your face or brushing your teeth, the Stoic would not begin the day without clearing the mental residue that accumulates unnoticed. Ask, what assumptions am I waking up with? What beliefs am I carrying into the day, untested and possibly untrue? What expectations do I have that are not grounded in reality? What emotions am I giving power to, and why? These questions act as filters. If they are not examined, these forces guide your behavior from the shadows. They become the invisible hand steering your reactions. That moment of snapping at a loved one, of growing impatient in traffic, or of spiraling into self-doubt often has its roots in thoughts we never questioned. And when emotion leads unexamined, chaos follows. You become a puppet of your passions. That's not weakness, it's blindness. And the Stoic path is about learning to see with clarity, with reason, and with calm objectivity. The Stoics knew that self-examination was a daily duty, not a once-a-year reflection done in dramatic moments of crisis. They understood that truth, if not constantly returned to, slips quietly through our fingers, replaced by ego, projection, or habit. Self-reflection to them was not merely a philosophical practice, but a necessary element of sane, moral living. It was a discipline rooted in the love of truth, a love that prioritizes growth over comfort and illumination over delusion. The purpose was never to control everything or to reach some illusion of perfection, but rather to understand more fully who you are, where you are drifting, and how to return to your chosen path. They were not obsessed with control, but with understanding. And they understood that clarity is a kind of freedom, the ability to distinguish between what belongs to you and what does not, between your perceptions and reality, between what you feel and what is objectively true. When you have that clarity, you are no longer reactive. You are composed, discerning, and far less likely to be shaken by the chaos of the world. They sought to clean the lens of their perception before engaging with the world, just as one would clean a mirror before trusting what it shows. A dirty mirror distorts reality, so does a cloudy mind. To have clarity of mind requires first that we see ourselves, not as we wish to be, not as others perceive us, but as we are, with our flaws, our strengths, our inconsistencies, with our hidden fears, the habits we defend without cause, the masks we wear even in solitude. The mirror of the Stoic is internal honesty, the kind that does not flatter but frees. It does not stroke the ego but sharpens the soul. It may wound pride in the short term, but it heals character in the long term. This is where wisdom begins, not in books or lectures, but in standing before the self and saying, "Let me look without illusion." And it is that daily moment of raw sincerity that fortifies the soul to meet the day with unshakable presence and moral clarity. Before you check your appearance in the mirror, check your mindset. Ask yourself 3 questions. What am I assuming? What am I afraid of? What am I grateful for? Write down your answers. Use this as your emotional weather report. If it's stormy, carry an umbrella of awareness. If it's calm, move forward with quiet confidence. Chapter 8. Mastering Morning Adversity. The Stoics did not expect their mornings to be perfect. In fact, they expected disruption. They prepared for it mentally, knowing that serenity isn't a product of perfection, but of resilience. A barking dog, a harsh word, a delay. These are not exceptions to the day. They are the day. Life unfolds with friction, and the Stoic understands this not as failure, but as form. They knew that peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the mastery of one's reaction to it. Peace is not passive. It is earned through consistent composure. Seneca wrote that a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. In the morning, trials often arrive before breakfast. A missed alarm, a child in a bad mood, an email bearing bad news. The chaos may be small in scale, but its emotional weight can be heavy. How you respond in those early disruptions determines your momentum. It reveals how much power you have over your own mood, and whether you've surrendered that power to something as small as a misplaced sock or an unkind comment. It's easy to let one negative event cascade into an entire narrative. A spilled coffee becomes a bad day. A traffic jam becomes an excuse for anger. One tense exchange becomes the lens through which you interpret every moment thereafter. A missed train morphs into a story about life's unfairness. A small comment becomes a perceived attack. The mind, when left unchecked, builds catastrophes out of inconveniences. But the Stoics trained their minds not to be hijacked by the trivial. They understood that the first battle of the day is often emotional. They practiced noticing their triggers without feeding them. They interrupted the inner narrative before it gained momentum. They asked, "Is this within my control?" and responded accordingly. If it wasn't, they released it like a bird from the hand. If it was, they acted, not with aggression, but with grace, with composure, with clarity. They chose virtue over reaction. To master morning adversity is to decide that you will not let minor problems steal your major purpose. It is to establish your sovereignty in the face of annoyance. It is to recognize that although discomfort is inevitable, defeat is optional. The Stoics taught that your first impulse does not have to be your final response. You have a choice in every moment, even when things go wrong. That choice is the birth of freedom. You decide that your mood will be shaped by values, not by volatility. You decide that your thoughts will be guided by reason, not dictated by circumstance. You are not a leaf in the wind, helpless and tossed about by every breeze of frustration. You are the captain of your vessel, the commander of your character. While you cannot stop the waves from rising, you can determine how you meet them. With grip on the wheel, you steer by principle, not panic. Your destination, your principles, remain the same, even if the waters shift beneath you. A Stoic does not expect stillness from life. They expect themselves to remain steady amid motion, to meet the turning tides not with resistance, but with resilience. Small storms may strike, but you adjust your sails, not your spirit. You adapt in form, not in core. You do not curse the wind, you harness it. You transform it into movement, into momentum, into a test of your training. Even headwinds become instruments of progress to the one who is awake and anchored. You stay the course, not rigidly, but resolutely. And in staying the course, you win not just the moment, but the momentum of the day. Each response becomes a rhythm, and that rhythm becomes your identity. A composed response first thing in the morning becomes the tone that echoes into every room, every task, every trial that follows. And a person who begins in mastery often finishes in peace, not because the day was easy, but because they met it with strength. The next time something goes wrong in the morning, pause. Take one breath, then say, I will not lose the day because of this moment. Let that breath be a line in the sand, a conscious interruption of the spiral that threatens to pull you under. Recenter your mind not only in silence, but in clarity. What truly matters today? What virtue can I bring into this moment of friction? Remind yourself that inconvenience is not catastrophe. It is a test of mastery, and mastery is built through repetition. Each small disruption is an invitation to practice steadiness, to embody the Stoic belief that peace is internal, not circumstantial. Treat that moment like a training ground. Smile inwardly at the challenge. Choose the better response. Pass the test with calm, not because you're indifferent, but because you've prepared to remain unmoved by the petty and anchored by the principle. Chapter 9. Choosing your morning language. Words are tools of the mind. What you say, especially what you say to yourself, becomes the script your day follows. Language is not just a way to describe reality, it is a way to design it. The Stoics were precise with language because they knew its power to shape perception. A word, once spoken, even internally, carries weight. It sets direction. It either builds you or blinds you. Marcus Aurelius often corrected his own internal language. Instead of saying, I have to, he would say, I get to. He understood that duty is not a burden, it is a chance to live with excellence. That one change transformed obligation into opportunity, and that shift in language shifted his energy. It wasn't about pretending things were easier than they were. It was about meeting them with a mindset that preserved dignity and agency. Even in the face of war, betrayal, or personal hardship, Marcus knew that framing mattered. His inner speech was not a passive echo, but a deliberate instrument of discipline. We too must guard the words we speak when the day begins. The first phrases you utter, whether aloud or internally, lay the track for your thoughts to run on. The phrases you mutter, this day is going to be awful, I'm already behind, nothing ever goes right. These are not neutral observations, they are self-fulfilling spells. You don't just speak them, you start to believe them. They influence your physiology, your choices, your posture toward the world. The shoulders slump, the breath shortens, the will weakens. Words shape belief. Belief shapes behavior. Behavior shapes outcome. It's a cycle that begins with thought and language. Your inner dialogue becomes the story you live by, and the story you live by becomes your reality. The words you choose are not just background noise, they are blueprints. They are maps for your emotions, your responses, and your overall interpretation of what life presents to you. Each word you use either sharpens your focus or scatters it, either fuels your fear or fans your courage, either builds momentum or breeds inertia. Words, when repeated, become beliefs. Beliefs, when internalized, become reflexes. And over time, these reflexes shape the architecture of your character. When your language is careless, your character erodes without you noticing. When your language is reactive and pessimistic, you slowly cede authority over your emotions. You program your nervous system to anticipate disappointment, and your imagination begins to operate within a narrower and darker corridor. But when your language is intentional, your virtue becomes rooted. You prepare your mind like soil for the seeds of strength, discipline, and resolve. Every word you say to yourself becomes a micro-decision. Will I build or will I break? This is not about pretending that struggle doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let your words make struggle worse. It's about naming things as they are without surrendering to them. It's about choosing your language with the same care you choose the tools to build a home, because you are, in fact, building something, a self worth living in. To live like a Stoic is to narrate your life in a way that aligns with virtue. That doesn't mean lying or pretending. It doesn't mean silencing truth for the sake of forced optimism. It means choosing the language that encourages strength, clarity, and ownership. Stoic language is not about sugarcoating, it's about strengthening. It gives structure to the mind, forming scaffolding around thought and response. It means developing an inner tone that is firm but compassionate, honest but not harsh. It is the tone of a coach who expects your best, but never tears you down. It is the voice that steps forward when panic or doubt rises, offering guidance instead of guilt. It means turning the voice in your head into your most reliable coach instead of your worst critic. A critic wounds, a coach refines. The Stoic does not indulge in self-pity, nor do they deny themselves compassion. They navigate a balanced path, acknowledging setbacks while reinforcing resolve. It means speaking to yourself like a leader, not a victim, like someone who takes full responsibility for their mind, someone who understands that their internal state is not dictated by fate, but forged in the furnace of intention and repetition, someone who recognizes that thought, like action, is within their domain of control, and that this is where freedom lives. That realization is not trivial. It is the hinge on which transformation swings. This shift is not cosmetic, it is foundational. It reaches into the root of how you process life. It transforms how you interpret events, how you rise from failure, and how you persevere through discomfort. It dictates how you speak to yourself when you fall short, how you adjust when plans shift, how you carry yourself when no one else is watching. It is a reorientation of your inner voice from judgment to discipline, from complaint to commitment, from avoidance to accountability. It is an act of self-leadership every morning, choosing to plant your inner language in fertile ground so that clarity, courage, and control can grow. It means framing your challenges as opportunities and your duties as choices. It means seeing your obligations not as burdens, but as the arenas where your character is revealed. It means saying, "I will," instead of, "I can't." "I'll try" becomes, "I'm committed." "I'm stuck" becomes, "I am learning." Even a phrase like "I'm tired" becomes, "I'll bring the best of what I have today." "It's too hard" becomes, "This is worth doing." "I've failed" becomes, "I'm learning what works." The Stoic does not simply think differently, they speak differently, and by doing so, they live differently. Their words are not a reaction, but a declaration of intent, a declaration of virtue. And in that declaration lies power, the power to start the day aligned with reason, fortified by intention, and grounded in self-respect. And from that ground, you rise, not perfectly, but purposefully, and with each rising, you refine the person you are becoming. Begin the day by rewriting one negative thought. Take a moment to scan your internal dialogue and catch the first piece of resistance or dread that arises. If you think, "I don't want to go to work," reframe it as, "I choose to show up today with strength." If you hear yourself say, "I'm too tired to do anything meaningful," change it to, "My energy is limited, but I'll use it wisely." If the thought is, "This is going to be a terrible day," respond with, "I have the tools to meet this day with courage." Speak it aloud, not just mentally, but with voice and conviction. When your vocal cords shape your thoughts into sound, you anchor them into reality. Let that sound carry intention. Let your voice guide your values. Your words are not just a commentary on your life, they are an instruction to your mind. By speaking a new narrative, you train your nervous system to expect presence, resilience, and control. This is not an affirmation for affirmation's sake, it's a recalibration of your internal compass. Begin with one sentence, make it yours, speak it with clarity, then move forward with it in your chest like armor. Chapter 10. Closing the gate. The morning ends, the world enters, emails arrive, traffic builds, notifications buzz, voices rise, deadlines loom. But before you lose yourself in the outer world, the Stoics invite you to do one final thing: close the inner gate. This moment, brief but sacred, separates the time you gave to your mind from the time the world will take from your attention. It is the final defense against distraction, the intentional act that transforms preparation into armor. The gate is your boundary, the symbolic line between your deliberate morning and the chaotic rest of the day. To close it is to affirm, I have set my course, I have tuned my mind, I have aligned myself with my values, and no matter what the day brings, I will meet it as myself. This act is not physical, it is internal. It is the final moment of self-possession before the outer world demands your attention. Like a captain sealing the hatch before launching into unpredictable seas, you close the gate to carry calm into the storm. That calm is not indifference, it is earned assurance. You carry it not because the sea will be calm, but because your mind is anchored. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, taught that the wise man is like a fortress, open to reason but not overrun by noise. A fortress is not passive, it is protected. It is designed to withstand pressure, not by isolating itself, but by reinforcing its core. Like that fortress, you do not isolate from the world, but you step into it with structure. Your morning is that fortification. Each step you took, from reflection to stillness, from intention to language, was a brick laid into your inner citadel. You don't build a castle during the storm. You build it in the silence before, when the tools are in your hand and the sky is still. And now you face the day not with fear, but with readiness. You now step into the world not unarmed, but armored by intention, each choice a shield, each breath a preparation. So before the world rushes in fully, stop for one final breath. Inhale not just air, but presence. Let it enter slowly, consciously, and remind you that you are here by intention, not accident. Feel the weight of what you've built in these early moments, not just the quiet, but the quality of attention you've cultivated. You've chosen reflection over reaction. You've chosen structure over chaos. You have practiced presence. You've affirmed your values. You've trained your focus. You've cultivated a kind of internal gravity, a steadiness that does not beg the world to cooperate, but meets it on solid footing. These are not small rituals. They are profound acts of self-leadership. They are choices that anchor you to something deeper than mood or momentum. Review your values, not as abstract ideals, but as living practices. Ask yourself, how did I walk in courage today, even in small steps? Where did I choose patience over panic? When did I extend compassion where frustration wanted to arise? When did I listen instead of react? Recall your morning victories, however small, however subtle, that you rose with purpose, that you resisted the tug of distractions, that you spoke kindly, that you took a breath when it would have been easier to rush, that you paused before the day asked too much of you, that you chose stillness over chaos, that you remembered you are the architect of your state, not the victim of it. These moments are the threads from which the tapestry of your character is slowly and deliberately woven. Let those acts be your compass now, not just memories, but active reinforcements of who you are becoming. Let your posture reflect your preparation. Let your tone be influenced by your training. Let your decisions echo the clarity you shaped in those first quiet minutes. Let your actions from this point forward carry the strength of your preparation like a current running beneath the surface. Even when the waves rise, that current remains steady. You may not control what the day brings, but you can control what you bring to it. Steadiness, clarity, strength. Let the gate close with resolve, not with tension, but with assurance, with a subtle nod to the inner work you've done. Let your day begin with quiet authority, a calm earned not by accident, but by design, discipline, and devotion. a calm that carries not just through the morning, but through the entire arc of the day. Set a closing ritual. It could be 5 seconds of silence, a short affirmation, a quiet thank you for the time you've had. Whatever it is, make it intentional. Seal your morning. Then carry its discipline forward like armor. You will not win every moment, but you can win the morning. Not by avoiding disruption, but by meeting it with clarity. Not by rushing, but by returning to rhythm. Not by controlling the world, but by commanding your mind. This is how the Stoics lived, and this is how you can live. Starting with the dawn. Rise, reflect, respond, lead. Your morning is your foundation. Strengthen it, and the whole day becomes yours.